The International Trade Center is the joint development assistance agency of the WTO and the United Nations, and we work to build the competitiveness of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to be able to help them grow through trade. We work on the full gamut of issues that can increase the competitiveness of a business and an economy: agriculture value chains, services, trade policy and trade facilitation, inclusive trade such as women, youth, refugees, and the green economy, trade and market intelligence, research, standards, e-commerce, and access to finance. We're headquartered right here in Geneva, but we have a growing number of projects around the world. We focus on Africa, least developed countries, small island developing states like my own, Barbados, and on vulnerable economies. So the Sustainable Development Goals represent a universal global development agenda for all UN member states and development actors until 2030. They are an interlinked set of 17 global goals supported by 169 targets in economic, social, and environmental and developmental dimensions. In 2021, the International Trade Center directly supported 11 SDGs. ITC contributes to the SDGs by working with policymakers, business support organizations, enterprises, and market partners to support the trade competitiveness of small businesses. And we have systems in place to monitor results and help the global community track advances towards achieving these very important goals. We integrate them into our projects and our reporting, and they form part of our indicators on showing impact. We focus specifically on SDGs 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17. But let me zone in on one particular SDG, SDG 5, on achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. Here at ITC, we have a specific program called She Trades, look it up, which works to economically empower women-owned and women-led businesses to grow through trade. We support them in building skills to run a successful business, to create a community through our She Trades hubs in over 30 different countries. We work on gender disaggregated data, and we support issues such as access to finance and access to markets. The biggest challenge that we're facing as an organization is, I think, a shared one in the international development community: how to address the multiple crises that we're facing every day, what I call the intersectionality of crises, and the growing demand for our constituents, including in middle-income countries who increasingly have a growing working poor. We are also addressing issues around diversity and inclusion. Not a problem, but rather a challenge to ensure that we create an organization that reflects the values of the UN and is supportive and is a leader on gender equality and inclusion. Here at ITC, we've developed a system of focal points that represent gender, the rights of persons with disabilities, the rights of LGBTQI+, geographical and racial diversity, and a number of gender inclusion champions to open the discussion on diversity and inclusion and why it matters for a modern organization like ITC. Let's talk about food security versus climate adaptation. So on June 8th this year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the UNCTAD Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan introduced a report on Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy and Finance. And what was one of the main findings? That a food crisis is on the horizon. And there are a number of reasons for this. The war in Ukraine has shown the over-reliance of countries, especially those in Africa, on the imports of grains, cooking oils and fertilizers from Ukraine and Russia. Prices of these basic items have skyrocketed. The planting season in Ukraine has been disrupted and supply chains have been cut off. The report further showed that this year, between 179 million and 181 million people are forecast to be facing a food crisis or worse conditions in 41 out of 53 countries. And with 19 million more people expected to face chronic undernourishment globally in 2023, we know the impact that the reduction in food exports from Russia and Ukraine will have on the food availability worldwide. Export restrictions on food and fertilizers have surged since the war. Trade restrictions today affect almost 1/5 of the total calories traded globally, which further aggregates the crisis. And recall SDG 2, which seeks sustainable solutions to end hunger in all its forms by 2030 and to achieve food security. So what's one of the most common sense ways to address this? Invest in agriculture and produce more food, right? Not exactly. Because at the same time we're facing a potential food crisis, we are in the middle of a climate change crisis. The recent IPCC report on climate change 2022 recognized, and I quote, "Without further abatement, cumulative future CO2 emissions from planned and existing fossil fuel infrastructure will exceed cumulative net CO2 emissions, which will cause the warming to exceed 1.5 degrees. What does this mean in real terms? Let's take my country, Barbados, for example, a small island state that is a net food importer and is tourism dependent. This could be a loss of biodiversity, water scarcity, rising tide and massive beach erosion, a decrease in tourism revenue, an increase in electricity costs, a rise in transportation, lack of agricultural land, and I could go on. And this is something similar that could happen in Iceland as well. Now, what is the relationship between food and this crisis? Recall that one of the key recommendations has been to move from using fossil fuel to more natural forms of energy. So a move to more biofuels. And what are biofuels? Ethanol made from corn and sugarcane, and biodiesel made from vegetable oil, including soybean and palm oil, which is often blended in motor gels to boost energy supplies and reduce the environmental impacts of fossil fuels. So this is positive, a move to more natural energy. But did you know that the growth of biofuels contributed to almost 50% of the price increase of corn during the food crisis in 2008? And who does this impact the most? The poor in the developing countries that rely on this as a staple food. In the US, for example, 36% of total corn production went into biofuels, while biodiesel accounted for 40% of soybean oil supplies. So the total amount of crops used annually for biofuels is equal to the calorie consumption of 1.9 billion people. So here you can see this tension, this wicked problem between growing for clean energy and growing for nutrition. And let's look at another example, the move to electric vehicles to address the use of fossil fuels. Electric vehicles in the US, for example, account for 5.6% of car sales, twice today than a year ago. In the EU, battery-powered cars account for more than 10% of new cars sold. But where does the inputs from these batteries come from? From mining. And here we also need to look at issues around sustainable mining and ensuring that there's no child labor or enforced labor in the mining industries.